All right, so you want to ditch the 9 to 5 and live solely off dividends. Well, you're not alone.
Not at all. It's a question we get all the time.
Luckily for us, you've sent in this source
Yeah.
that really digs into the nitty-gritty.
I'm excited to dive in.
We both read it, get ready for some serious number crunching, but as someone who values efficiency, I promise we'll make sure you walk away with the key insights.
Exactly. No need to drown you in financial jargon.
Absolutely.
It's a pretty popular aspiration.
It is, yeah.
I mean, who wouldn't want to have their money working hard for them, generating that sweet passive income?
Right.
But the reality is building a dividend empire.
Yeah.
It's more marathon than sprint. This source makes that very clear.
Exactly. And the first hurdle is figuring out how much you even need to invest to even reach that finish line.
Right.
And the article throws out some pretty eye-opening figures.
It does.
I'm talking millions, not thousands, to generate a comfortable monthly income.
Right. It all boils down to dividend yield, which is essentially the percentage return you get on your investment in the form of dividends. Let's say you want to replace your current salary. Let's say you want to live off, say, $5,000 a month.
Okay, $5,000 a month. That's the dream.
Right.
Just rolling in. So walk me through this. How do we get there?
Well, assuming a reasonable dividend yield of 4%, you would need a whopping $1.5 million invested.
Wow.
And that's just the starting point.
$1.5 million? That is a serious chunk of change.
It is.
I can see why the source debunks the whole get-rich-quick myth surrounding dividend investing.
Absolutely.
It's clearly not for the faint of heart.
No.
Or the light of walnut.
And it's important to understand that chasing those high yields can lead you straight into what are called dividend traps.
Ooh, dividend traps. That sounds a little ominous.
Yeah, so these are companies with seemingly tempting yields that are often unsustainable.
Okay.
And mask underlying financial troubles.
So it's not as simple as just picking the stock with the biggest payout. What are some red flags we should be watching out for?
One key metric is the payout ratio. This tells you what percentage of a company's earnings are being paid out as dividends. A high payout ratio, say above 80%, can be a sign that the company is stretching itself thin to maintain those dividends.
Okay.
Might be a sign they're heading for a dividend cut.
So it's like a company trying to keep up appearances.
Yeah.
With lavish parties.
Right.
While their bank account is dwindling.
Exactly.
Not a good sign. What else should we be looking for?
Another thing to watch out for is a high debt-to-equity ratio. This indicates that the company relies heavily on borrowed money, which can impact its ability to pay dividends consistently, especially if interest rates rise or their earnings take a hit.
That makes sense. High debt is like having a ton of credit card bills piling up.
Right.
It can put a serious strain on your finances.
Exactly. And that's why diversification is so important. It's like the golden rule of investing.
Right.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Instead, spread your investments across different sectors.
Makes sense. So we're not just talking classic dividend stocks.
Yeah.
We're maybe looking at REITs, tech companies, utilities.
Precisely. Diversifying across those different sectors helps to cushion the blow if one industry experiences a downturn.
Right.
It's about building a portfolio that can weather the inevitable storms of the market.
Speaking of which, let's talk about those market storms. Even with a well-diversified portfolio, wouldn't a recession potentially wreak havoc on that dividend income?
Yeah, it's a valid concern. Recessions can indeed impact dividend payments. Companies might cut or even eliminate dividends during tough economic times to preserve cash flow.
Okay, so how do we recession-proof our dividend strategy? Because let's be honest, none of us can predict when the next downturn is going to hit.
Right. That's where building a cash reserve comes in. Having a buffer of savings can provide a safety net, allowing you to cover expenses without having to sell off investments at a loss during a market dip.
So it's like an emergency fund specifically for your dividend income. This seems like a smart move.
Absolutely. And another strategy is to focus on dividend growth investing. So instead of solely chasing those high initial yields, you prioritize companies that have a consistent track record of increasing their dividends year after year.
So even if that starting yield is a little bit lower, the potential for those payouts to grow over time can help offset the impact of inflation.
You got it.
Okay.
It's a long-term approach that emphasizes sustainability and the power of compounding. Think of it like planting a tree that grows stronger and taller with each passing season, eventually bearing more and more fruit.
I love that analogy.
And speaking of trees, the article dives into the world of dividend aristocrats, which is a group of companies.
Okay, so we've been talking about these dividend aristocrats.
Yes.
Can you tell me more about them?
Yeah, so these are companies listed on the S&P 500 that have consistently increased their dividends for at least 25 consecutive years.
Wow.
Think of them as the royalty of the dividend world.
So we're talking companies like Coca-Cola,
Yes.
Johnson & Johnson, those kinds of stalwarts.
Exactly. These companies have demonstrated their ability to weather those economic storms and reward their shareholders through thick and thin.
Yeah.
Their stability makes them attractive for long-term dividend investors.
But wouldn't their yields be lower since they're already so well established?
Yeah, that's often the trade-off.
Okay.
Their yields might not be the flashiest,
Right.
but their consistency and commitment to growing those dividends over time make them really appealing.
Yeah.
They tend to offer a sense of security that you might not get with newer, higher-yielding companies.
That makes sense. It's like the difference between a reliable workhorse and a flashy sports car.
Yes.
The sports car might be exciting, but the workhorse will get you where you need to go.
Yeah.
Reliably.
I like that analogy. And remember, even with the dividend aristocrats, you still need to diversify across sectors.
Of course.
Don't just load up on consumer staples. Look at other sectors like healthcare industrials, even technology.
Wow.
There are dividend aristocrats in almost every industry.
It all comes back to diversification.
Yes.
Spread those bets.
Yeah.
Manage that risk.
It's like the investing mantra.
It is. But let's switch gears a bit. We've talked a lot about the numbers.
Uh-huh.
But the source also dives into like the psychological aspect
Right.
of dividend investing.
And that's often an overlooked aspect.
Yeah.
It's one thing to understand the financial mechanics, but it's quite another to manage your emotions when the market inevitably throws those curveballs.
Oh, I could definitely relate to that. The stock market can feel like a roller coaster sometimes,
Yeah.
especially when you're relying on that dividend income to pay the bill.
Exactly. Imagine this. You've diligently built your dividend portfolio.
Okay.
You're seeing those payments roll in like clockwork, and then bam, the market takes a nosedive.
Okay, I'm already feeling stressed just thinking about it.
Right.
My portfolio is shrinking.
Mm.
My dividend income might be at risk. Panic is setting in.
Yeah.
What do I do?
That's where understanding your own risk tolerance and having a plan is crucial.
Okay.
How much volatility can you stomach without making impulsive decisions?
Right.
Can you ride out the dips and trust in your long-term strategy?
That's a tough one. It's so easy to get caught up in the fear and the panic when the market goes haywire. It's like our primal fight or flight response kicks in and logic goes out the window.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to have a plan in place before those turbulent times hit.
Yeah.
You need to ask yourself, what will I do if my portfolio drops 10%, 20%, 30%?
Wow.
Having a predetermined plan helps you stay grounded and avoid making emotional decisions that could sabotage your long-term goals.
So it's all about having that mental fortitude, that discipline to stick to the plan,
Yes,
even when the market is screaming at you to jump ship.
exactly. It's about having the patience to ride out the storms, knowing that the market always recovers eventually.
Right.
Think of it like a ship navigating through rough seas.
Yeah.
It might get tossed around a bit, but with a steady hand on the wheel and a clear destination in mind, it will ultimately reach its port.
I love these analogies.
Yeah.
They really bring it home.
Yeah.
So we've got our plan, our risk tolerance is defined.
Mm-hmm.
We're mentally prepared for those ups and downs.
Okay.
But how do we actually start building this dividend portfolio?
Well, that's the exciting part, and it's what we'll be diving into in the next segment.
Okay, I'm all ears. I'm ready to get my hands dirty and start building this dividend empire.
Great. Let's start with a look at those dividend aristocrats.
Okay.
They can be a solid foundation for your portfolio.
All right, so we're ready to roll up our sleeves and actually start building this dividend portfolio.
Yes.
You mentioned the dividend aristocrats.
Yeah.
Should we just load up on those and call it a day?
Well, not quite. Remember, diversification is key.
Right.
While dividend aristocrats offer that stability, it's important to spread your investments across different sectors.
Right. We don't want all of our eggs in one basket, even if it is a seemingly sturdy basket, woven from years of consistent dividends.
Exactly.
So where do we go from here?
Let's consider some other avenues for dividend income.
Okay.
For example, you might explore real estate investment trusts, or REITs.
Okay, REITs. I've heard of those.
Yeah, so these companies own and operate income-producing real estate properties.
Yeah.
Like shopping malls, apartments, office buildings.
They're known for their high yields, right?
That's right. REITs are legally required to distribute a significant portion of their taxable income to shareholders as dividends.
Okay.
which is why they often offer those higher yields.
Okay, so incorporating some REITs could boost our overall dividend income.
Exactly.
But what about the tech sector?
Yes.
There's some massive tech companies out there that pay dividends.
Absolutely. The tech sector is a dynamic space.
Yeah.
With both established players and emerging companies offering dividends,
Okay.
while they might not have those long dividend histories of the aristocrats. Their growth potential can translate into significant dividend growth over time.
It's all about striking that balance between stability and growth potential, isn't it?
Exactly. Now, if you're looking for an efficient way to diversify your dividend portfolio, exchange-traded funds or ETFs can be your best friend.
ETFs, they seem to be everywhere these days.
Yeah.
Explain what makes them so special for dividend investors.
Think of ETFs as baskets of stocks or bonds that you can buy and sell just like individual stocks.
Okay.
There are ETFs specifically designed to track dividend-paying companies.
Got it.
So with a single investment, you gain exposure to a diversified portfolio of dividend stocks.
Wow, that sounds like a great way to simplify things.
It is.
So instead of painstakingly researching dozens of individual stocks, I could just pick a few dividend-focused ETFs and call it a day.
It can certainly streamline the process, especially if you're just starting out.
Okay.
But even with ETFs, due diligence is essential.
You're telling me I can't just blindly throw money at any ETF with the word dividend in the name?
Not quite. You need to look under the hood.
Okay.
Check the ETF's expense ratio, which is that annual fee charged to manage the fund.
Right.
Also examine its holdings to understand what companies that ETF invests in.
So I need to be a savvy ETF shopper.
Yes.
Got it. Now, are there any specific tools or resources that can help me research these dividend aristocrats, these REITs, these ETFs? I'm ready to start digging.
Absolutely. There are plenty of great resources available. Many financial websites offer stock screeners that allow you to filter for dividend-paying companies.
Yeah.
Based on criteria like yield payout ratio and sector.
Payout ratio, that's the one that tells us what percentage of a company's earnings are being paid out as dividends, right?
That's the one. You want to look for companies with a healthy payout ratio, ideally below 70%.
Okay.
Just to make sure that those dividends are sustainable.
Right. We don't want those unsustainable dividends leading us into a dividend trap, as we talked about earlier. Okay, so we've got our stock screeners. We're researching ETFs. We're poring over financial statements. Anything else we should be keeping in mind as we're building this dividend portfolio?
Don't forget about that psychological aspect we discussed earlier. Investing is as much about managing your emotions as it is about crunching numbers.
That's right. Having a plan, knowing my risk tolerance, and sticking to my strategy, even when the market is throwing those inevitable tantrums. Those are all crucial for success.
Precisely. And remember, building a dividend portfolio, it's a journey, not a destination. It requires ongoing attention, research, and adjustments along the way.
So it's not a set it and forget it kind of deal.
Not at all. You need to stay informed about your investments, review your portfolio periodically, and be prepared to make changes as market conditions evolve or your financial goals shift.
This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive into the world of dividends.
It has.
We've demystified the math, explored different investment options, and even delved into those psychological aspects of this investing strategy.
And remember, even if living solely off dividends isn't your ultimate goal, incorporating dividend-paying stocks into your overall investment plan can be a powerful wealth-building tool.
Absolutely. Those dividends can be a great source of passive income, helping to grow your wealth over time and potentially providing you with more financial freedom down the road. So keep learning, stay curious, and as always, happy investing